What it do, y'all, and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I'm going to be talking about 10 of my top palettes that I have already ranked in 2022. Please keep in mind that this list is restricted to the palettes that I've already ranked. So I've done 2 ranking videos, one where I did 5 palettes that I ranked, and the other one I think I ranked somewhere around 10 palettes. I will have both of those videos linked down below for you all. So I only was allowing myself to kind of pick from that. So that will kind of dictate the palettes that are represented in this. And so these are the top 10 of those. I am still in the background working on getting my full opinions on a couple of other palettes that are more new to my collection, and those hopefully I will get another ranking video up pretty soon. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to give you that disclaimer. Everything that is on my face will be down below. This was not a look that I recorded, but I think it's really cute. I pretty much used Project Pan and a couple of palettes that, like I said, I am testing out. So with that said, let's get into the video. Okay, so I don't know how I'm going to do this. I think what I'm going to do first is just kind of list all of the products. I don't know if I really feel that it's important enough to rank. These truly are the top 10 of the palettes that I kind of have enjoyed this year, or I fully got my thoughts out this year, but let's get into it. The first one that's on the stack is actually from Oden's Eye, and this is their Giant Wolves palette, which they did a collaboration with Annette's Makeup Corner. If we're being really honest, these first 2 that I'm going to mention were really just put into this pile because I needed 10. If I was able to kind of narrow it down, these 2 wouldn't be in this top ranking, but I did enjoy the formulation of this palette. It has a really good formula. It's just the shade preference overall. When I got this in my hands, I wasn't loving the shade variety that was represented in this palette, and so I just don't find myself yearning to reach for it as often as I truly thought I would. Very similar to that, like I said, this one as well, and this is actually the Natasha Denona pastel palette. Don't get me wrong, for a pastel palette I think this is really nice, and for Natasha Denona I was very happy to bring these types of shades and tones into my Natasha Denona collection. That said, this is not a palette that I see myself really yearning to pick up compared to kind of the other 8. So yeah, just keep that in mind, but it is a very good palette, and I do stand by my review and my kind of discussion overall when it came to the ranking video that I did, I think last month. Next I have another Oden's Eye palette, and this is with Angelica Nyquist, and this is her Hella palette. This actually is, I believe, still available, and I will try my best to link everything down below that is still available. This is a really pretty palette, beautiful colors, beautiful formula. This is definitely not one of those higher ranking palettes. If I had to rank this would be kind of mid-tier worthy, but really enjoy this palette. And if you are interested in the color scheme, I definitely don't think it would be a disappointment. It's just a matter if you would reach for this more so over whatever it is you already have. Then we have a Melt Cosmetics palette. This one happens to be the Gemini 2. I really enjoyed this palette. I was slightly disappointed, as I mentioned in my roundup in the previous video, just because I thought these were going to be more corally mattes when there really are pinky mattes. So just keep that in mind, but overall, fantastic palette, fantastic formula, highly recommend, and yeah, it really deserves its spot in the top tier ranking. Next in my stack I have from Huda Beauty, and this is the Mercury Retrograde. I believe in the ranking this reigned supreme, and this is still just a beautiful palette, beautiful formula. I find that I'm really get along with Huda Beauty's formula, both her mattes and her shimmers. I just really enjoy the palettes. Now, do I ever want to pay the full price? No, but when her palettes do go on sale, I definitely do scoop up a palette, because it really, these bigger palettes, I find the quality is top notch. The second to the duo for the Melt Cosmetics is of course the Gemini. This was another one, you know, I had to keep in this ranking. I thought that this was definitely really beautiful formula, beautiful quality, beautiful color scheme, and it really once again earned its spot in this top 10 ranking. Then we have a palette from Glaminatrix Cosmetics. This is their Silent Night palette. This is a beautiful palette. At one point this was limited edition. To my knowledge now this is definitely permanent, and I think that was a fantastic thought on their side. The formulas are beautiful, all of them. I really do enjoy them. I do say that these two are still a little bit tricky. It definitely depends on the type of primer that you use, whether they're going to really last long term on your eyes. Do keep in mind that I have oily eyelids, so even with a really good primer, depending on the primer, I find that my lids will eat up any shimmer shade. But I do just want to mention that those two definitely did not work beautifully with the NYX glitter glue. So do keep that in mind in the event that that is kind of your only or your main primer, because those shades will not really jive with that. Three more palettes that I want to talk about, and we next have the Patrick Ta Extra Major Dimension Volume 1. Really still loving this palette. Beautiful formula, beautiful quality. I love the different textures and variety. Even though it is all browns, I really do enjoy a good neutral palette, so definitely thought that that one deserved its spot in the top 10. Two more palettes I wanted to talk about, and we're going to round out the Oden's Eye palettes, and I'm going to round it out with the Tina or the Fancy Face Sis Hummingbird palette. This is such a beautiful palette. I loved the variety in the shades. I did wish that there was one or two kind of more mid-tone shades and maybe one less shimmer, but I loved this palette. It is fantastic. The typical Oden's Eye formula, highly recommend. And then of course, last but certainly not least, we have the Heather Austin palette with Adept Cosmetics. You guys, I cannot stress enough how beautiful these metallics are on the eyes. They are definitely a lot more smooth typically. Some of them definitely have a little glitter in there, which is really nice, but generally these are just a beautifully smooth formula when it comes to metallics, and the mattes blend beautifully. I really love this shade. It adds that diversity and that intrigue overall, and yeah, I just really have been enjoying this palette as well. So I think I've actually just kind of weirdly talked myself into ranking these. I think it would be kind of a really fun exercise, so give me 1 second. I'm gonna kind of hop off camera, deliberate, and then I'll come back to show you guys my ranking. And of course I'm gonna start off with number 10 and end up with number 1. Okay, so it didn't take me much time. We're gonna just start off with number 10 and we're gonna go down to number 1. I'm gonna explain why I have everything ranked in its order, and we're just gonna go from there. Okay, so at number 10, I am going to put the Giant Wolves palette by Annette's Makeup Corner. Once again, all of these palettes are really top tier. It just gets down to the fine print at this point, and just overall the color scheme just was not as beautiful as I thought it was going to be when I picked it up. And so truly that's the reason why this one is at number 10. Formula wise, everything else, it's beautiful. It's just that for me, it's just not a palette that calls my attention or a palette that I would reach for before I reach for any of the other 9 palettes in this ranking. Coming in at number 9, we're going to talk about the Natasha Denona pastel palette. It got just a slightly better intrigue from the Giant Wolves because you had a little bit more variety in those textures, formulas, and overall I'm just gonna more so reach for a Natasha Denona palette in general over that one, even if it doesn't have the depth and variety that I truly would love. But I just, you know, it makes sense to me. That's where it's at. Number 9. Number 8, once again, I kind of gave these kind of knocking points off in my previous ranking, and it gets the same kind of points reduced, and it is the Gemini 2. Truly, it is just the fact that these more pinky shades are not as corally as I had hoped. They are definitely pinks, and so for that reason I was just that slight disappointment. It just got ranked lower, and overall just because I was expecting something different when I picked it up. Am I still going to reach for this? Yes. Am I going to reach for any of these 10? Yes, I'm still going to reach for them, but there are some that I think I'm going to reach for more, and that's why they're ranked higher or lower. Coming in at number 7, we actually have the Glaminatrix Silent Night palette. Now, I put this one lower for a couple of reasons, and the big reason though is just that these two shades I felt were a little touch and go, right? So they're not as easy to apply, easy to work with in my perspective, in my experience. And so for that reason, I have to be more careful on like what I'm doing, what I'm applying with this palette. And most of the time, I just don't have the time or the care to actually do that. I just want to know what I'm putting on is going to work. I just want to put it on and go about my business. So for that reason, this one was a little bit lower than maybe some of the other ones. And for that reason, I also think I'm not going to reach for this palette before some of these other palettes that I know whatever I need to put on, whichever shades I reach for, they're definitely going to work. So that's why this one ranked a little bit lower. And then the last one in the bottom 5, once again, none of these palettes are bad. I just had to rank something somewhere, and it's going to go again to the Angelica Nyquist Hella palette. I definitely think this is a beautiful palette, beautiful formula, beautiful textures, all that jazz, but I just am not gravitating towards this color scheme right now, and I just don't think because of that I'm gonna reach for it over some of these other palettes, specifically the top 5. So that's why this is here. Beautiful formula, beautiful quality. I can't recommend it enough. It's just for me right now with my preferences, this is definitely not going to be something that I reach for before the top 5. Now the top 5, this was hard. It really was, but I had to do it. I decided I was going to do it and I did it. So coming in at number 5 is the Gemini palette. This is a beautiful, beautiful palette. I love the warm neutrals. I love the greens. Love this palette, and this palette just speaks to me a little bit more than this greeny pinky one, and so for that reason this one just got the number 5 spot. And yeah, number 5. Number 4 is going to something that I didn't think this was going to go here, but it's going here, and this is the Patrick Ta Major Dimension eyeshadow palette. This one slightly got a little bit ahead of a start than the Melt Cosmetics Gemini because you get a little bit more variety and texture, and I really do love textures variation in my palettes, and so I just really appreciated that. Specifically with this palette, I can reach for it and I can get my primer, my mattes, and my shimmers all in this. I can go from dark to light, and I don't feel like I need to reach for pretty much any other product when I want to do an eye look. So I really appreciate it for that palette, and that's why I kind of got a little bit better of a head start when it came to the Melt Gemini palette. So you guys know the top 3 now, right? There are 3 left. So it is once again the Hummingbird palette from Odin's Eye and Tina from the Fancy Face. It is the Mercury Retrograde palette from Huda Beauty. And then lastly, we have the Heather Austin and Adept Cosmetics palette. Now, I'm going to stop. I want you guys to take the time to go ahead and comment down below. Give me your guesses. And yeah, I would love to see if you guys are right, wrong. Let's see how much you know me. It's been a while since I've ranked 2 of these palettes, so it'll be intriguing to see what you guys think. And without further ado, let's get into the ranking. So coming in at number 3, I'm actually going to go ahead and give it to the Hummingbird palette from Odin's Eye and the Fancy Face. I really love this palette. It is so beautiful, so pigmented, beautiful, but there was that 1 or 2 shades that I would have loved to see this palette personally have. And so because this is my ranking and we're doing it based on like, am I going to reach for this, am I not, this just had 1 or 2 mattes that I think really would have elevated it for my use, and so it just could not overtake the other 2 palettes. Coming in at number 2, now this was a hard decision, right? So these are 2 palettes that I truly like. If I had to kind of repurchase all of my palettes this year, these 2 would have been the highest 2 palettes that I would have definitely taken the time to repurchase. And it was hard, but I had to make the decision, and who knows, maybe in a couple of months this decision would have been switched, but this is where we're at right now. And we're going for number 2 is the Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde palette. I love this palette. I love the variety in the tones. I love the variety in depth and the different textures. I do. Why this did not get number one is because the shimmers and the metallics that are presented in this, there's no kind of intrigue, right? You get what you get. You see what you're going to put on your eyes, and that's what you get. And so for that reason, although it is a beautiful palette, beautiful formula, I just could not say that this overtook the Heather Austin palette, because for me, I love a little intrigue, I love a little mystery, and I love the fact that sometimes when I reach for this palette and I reach for a metallic, a shimmer, a matte, I get a slightly different shade, a slightly different coloring, and it's unique. You never really know fully what you're gonna get until you apply it all on your eyes, you know what I mean? So for that reason, this palette just really spoke to me this year, and this is definitely just going to be the palette to beat when I finally do my ranking at the end of the year. So that's it. Within the first 6 months, these are the top 10 palettes that I have fully tested out, fully reviewed for you all. I definitely have quite a few palettes waiting to get tested out before I can do another roundup. I'm hoping I can get another roundup maybe next month, if not the month after that, and I will work on doing that for both eyes, so eyeshadow palettes, but also everything else, so cheeks, foundation, all of that jazz. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will see you guys again tomorrow. Tomorrow's video is going to be another new makeup releases. I'm very excited for that, and yeah, I'll see you guys then. Bye guys.